I tell you what, right? It's weird trying to think of these because the vast majority of finales that were disappointing tended to be the shows tended to peter out and just kind of cack themselves and crawl over the finish line anyway. So for me, the thing that stands out the most, especially in retrospect, if you think of the older seasons, is Game of Thrones. And I know that it's incredibly deflating, and I'm just so done. I'm so done talking about Game of Thrones at this point. But for the sake of just throwing something up there, that when you look at the general tone, the way all the character work that was done beforehand, all the theories that went into it, all the lore, all the depth of the script writing that was in those previous seasons, all leading to the finale that we got in Game of Thrones, it doesn't really add up, and I'm sorry. And so I would have to throw up Game of Thrones as just being, if you look at it on the whole, you take a step back, that final episode, considering everything that came beforehand, is just one of the most disappointing things ever. So, yeah.
See, I love comic book nerd shiz. Can't say swear words anymore, but that is the trademark phrase. And I love Spider-Man, not as much as Josh Brown, but I do love Spider-Man. And growing up, I watched a lot of Spider-Man TV shows. There was the really good one from the 90s with a really good theme. Not gonna replicate it because it's a bit very difficult. And then there was the Spider-Man Unlimited cartoon that got cancelled right as the penultimate episode aired, so I didn't know what happened. As you imagine, at being 5 years old, watching that and then thinking Spider-Man's dead is pretty traumatic. But there's an even more traumatic Spider-Man TV series that ended on a really, really somber note. There was a CGI show that came out for MTV kind of after the Sam Raimi films came out, and it had Neil Patrick Harris voicing Peter Parker, which was really cool. There was Michael Clark Duncan reprised his role as the Kingpin, which was really cool as well. And basically the series ended with Stan Lee giving a weird talk to Spider-Man, and then something bad happens. And basically the entire show ends with Peter Parker sticking his bloody Spider-Man suit in a suitcase full of rocks and throwing it in the Hudson River. And then walking away to sad music. And I was just watching it, I was like, is that the end? And then literally they never made a season 2. So that entire show ends with Peter Parker giving up. Andy Murray, what is your most hated TV series?
Hulk Hogan's Thunder in Paradise.
Why?
It was the last episode, wasn't it?
For this, I'm going to say True Blood, which is a show that by the time of the finale, which was in season 7, it had been going downhill for a long time. Like, from about season 5 onwards, it was just a shadow of its former self. It was, it had always been kind of silly and daft, but it was in a very camp, sexy, violent HBO vampires way. But then for the last couple of seasons, that had just become something very different. It just wasn't fun to watch. And yeah, the finale the thing about True Blood is it was never really supposed to be boring. Even if it was bad, like there was stuff going on. It was a ridiculous show in so many ways. There was vampires, there was fairies, there was werewolves. There was always at least something to grasp onto. And in the finale, it was just dull. There was nothing. Like all the best characters had kind of gone or just settled down. There was a time jump. Everyone got married and had bands, and just had Thanksgiving dinner and were happy ever after. Like, what is that?
Would you say it lost its bite?
So that's my bit done.
So I've got a different one to everyone else because they're all whinging about having actual finales. Oh, terrible! You got to wrap up. My favourite show didn't get one. Didn't even get a finale. Because, so it's My Name is Earl, basically. I went through 4 seasons of him having a list, trying to gain good karma, making everybody's lives better for him, for his own good, basically, because everything was going wrong for him. And you sort of thought this is going to lead to the point where he gets a resolution, gets good karma. But after 4 seasons, it just got cancelled out of absolutely nowhere. And the end of the season has to be continued. The original plan was always for it to be continued and for there to be a resolution to this list. The creator, Greg Garcia, came out later and said that he planned to not let him actually finish his list, but he was going to pass on his list to somebody else for them to do another list because the person that inspired him in the first place was somebody who he was part of their list. Earl was on their list. And it was this really nice planned ending that we just never got. There was a comic book that came out, which is fine. Everyone likes comics, especially you. But there was also going to be a film that dealt with it as well, and it just happened out of nowhere. Like 4 seasons and then nothing. We didn't get an answer to who Earl Jr.'s dad was. It was going to be funny, like it was going to be Dave Chappelle or someone like that, somebody famous. and we didn't get an answer to will he ever complete his list. And it was like, I don't care about like people not answering what happened to Tony Soprano or were they all really dead and lost. I didn't get anything. It just ended. Not happy.
You know what? For some reason it didn't spring to mind, but as soon as it did, I got the anger all over again. And it's the finale of Sherlock, which I know there might be some more, but for all intents and purposes, you know, it might not be for 10 years. So this is effectively a series finale. And it ended after one of the worst seasons of television in my lifetime. That face you're giving me right now, Ewan, is exactly what I'm feeling on the inside.
So bad.
It's so bad, but it's only bad because it makes you retroactively hate the rest of the show as well. For so long, I thought this was one of the smartest, most cutting-edge detective shows around there. The chemistry between Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman is so great, and those characters were so well realised. But then the showrunners, Mark Gatiss and Stephen Moffat, just got lost up their own arses, like about over these mystery stories, thinking they were so smart, but they weren't. And it got to this point where the plots were so convoluted and the series was so weird and so lacking in self-awareness that it just, I don't know what happened. And the finale itself was just a kick in the bollocks. After being teased about Moriarty's return for so long, it finally gets pushed to the side unceremoniously, and we're introduced to a new big bad, which is Sherlock's sister, which has some promise. She's in this maximum security kind of like prison, and she's playing this Saw-esque game on our heroes. And there could be genuine stakes, and there could be genuine tension, but there's none of that. Instead, that's all pushed aside for this ridiculous plot that makes the previous storylines worse, because it implies that Moriarty's a puppet for her somehow, even though now he's dead, in that everything he did was for her. And then there's this one horrible bit where the key to the entire puzzle is that Sherlock not only forgot that he had a sister, but that in his brain he had changed the death of his childhood friend and imagined him as a dog. So the key to the puzzle is this dog that he keeps remembering over and over again. You're thinking, oh, why has this got so much significance? And it turns out that in his stupid brain, he'd swapped them around. And that's in a proper show. That's in a big budget BBC premiere show. This one plot twist. It's horrible, and you don't know what's real and what isn't real. I'm struggling to describe it right now because I don't even know what the crack is anymore, and everything was weird. This was after a season of Sherlock being in his mind palace and grabbing stuff around and doing no detective work, just being a superhero. And the entire series ends on Watson and Holmes running out like the Batman and Robin in like this freeze frame. And I'm like, how far has this show fallen? It felt like an old spy novel, like a James Bond spyway of Batman, and it was tragic. And there is hope to bring them back. I'm sure BBC want to bring it back at some point once they both stop being superstars, but maybe they should just leave it alone, because after season 3, which I actually quite enjoyed, and now this, what's the point? What's the point? Sherlock Holmes, more like Sherlock, I don't know, Gnomes, Sherlock Go Home.
You know what, I think for me, it's got to be the finale of The Sopranos. And I know that's going to be a little bit divisive. Some people say, well, it's great. You can make up your own ending. You can decide what happens to Tony Soprano. I don't want to do that. I don't have to make my own decisions. I want to feel so unsatisfied. That's something for my girlfriend. Anyway, the reason why I don't like it is the fact they just cut to black. They're there, they're eating onion rings, Journey's blaring in the background. We were all wondering what's going to happen to Tony Soprano, and then all of a sudden, bang. Cut to black. You can't just cut to black at the end of your show. Cut to black. They're so lazy. I'll tell you what, if you cut to black, you're just a lazy piece of...
If this is don't use it. Right. It's very aggressive. I'm sorry, editor. I'll be nice.
Watched it for so many years, it was like, that's not good. We'll keep going. I think it's fine. Because it's not good is just how I feel about the finale as well, so it all bloody fits. Okay, this is bad. Hang on. Anyway.
Is the microphone actually?
The microphone's fine, yeah.
I just imagine like 50 years from now, that Peter Parker will be there going, Spider-Man. I've not heard that name in a long time. And then literally the entirety of New York's in ruins, because he gave up, didn't he?